We're kicking off this series of interviews with some of the most eccentric Porsche owners I've ever met, and I had to fly halfway across the world to meet these guys. Buckle up, guys. You're about to meet Dave, one of my favorite GT4 owners. Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Thanks for clicking on this video. I'm very excited to get you guys in front of Dave, one of the most eccentric and awesome GT4 owners I've ever met. So to give you guys a little bit of a setup, in Austria, Brock had brought on a video team. I was part of that team to go film the Sick Alps Rally. And Sick Alps Rally is something we'll get into later, but for you guys, what you need to know is it's like an outlaw Porsche group that rallies through the Alps. Hence the name Sick Alps. That's where I met Dave, and Dave is one of those guys that you just like have an instant connection with, and you're gonna hear from him soon. But before we get to that, guys, I do have to thank my sponsors, Pelican Parts. Pelican Parts is helping me out with my Safari build, and in case you didn't see, we also got some wheels for that build coming in here. But yeah, big shout out to Pelican Parts, guys. They chipped in and decided to help me out with this trip, so I have to give a big shout out to them. They're a wonderful online parts supplier for all European automotive needs. If you're restoring, maintaining, or modifying your car and it's an old European car, go check them out. They're definitely worth a look at. They have some of the best deals, best people, so big shout out to everyone in the team at Pelican Parts. I heard some of you guys watch the videos and really appreciate your viewership and the support you guys give to this channel, so thank you. And I do want to give one more shout out to Outlaw Gear. As you can tell, I got some new clothes. If you guys are looking for some Outlaw Porsche clothing like this, go check out Outlaw Gear. Again, link down in the description below. Okay, right before we get into Dave's story, I want to tell you guys about this series so you can stay tuned for more episodes coming out in the future. You're going to hear from Dave and his GT4 and his experience with the Porsche culture and community, as well as his take on Porsche Outlaws or the Porsche Outlaw community. Now in America, we have a different perspective on it. We mostly get that kind of culture vibe from guys like Rod Emery or Magnus Walker. But in Europe, it's really unique, and it's something that's kind of unspoken, but you can see a common theme here. And I think we're going to reveal that or hit that on the head at the end of this series. After I've interviewed all these people, I think I've got a good grasp on kind of the culture that I belong to and the culture that drives me inside the Porsche community as a whole. So with all that out of the way, without further ado, let's get you guys introduced to Dave.
So hi, I'm Dave Surace. I'm currently the head of design for Puma Motorsport. And I've had the car bug, I guess, since I've been about 3 years old. My dad and my uncle, his brother, they've always had race cars. I mean, this was back in the US, so it was a lot of drag racing. They were Hemi guys. My dad had a Challenger, uncle had a Cuda. So even some of my earliest memories were going to the racetrack, to the drag strip with them back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I guess you can say I've had this bug, been a petrol head for basically almost all my life. You know, I think growing up as a petrol head, I've just loved cars. You know, strangely enough, though, I never really fell in love with the big American V8s, the muscle cars. I always had this calling for smaller, lighter European cars. I mean, growing up in the 80s, I was really into Formula One. I love these small, efficient vehicles. And to be honest, I wasn't born a Porsche guy at all. And it just kind of came almost more out of necessity. At a certain point, I realized, like, okay, I've done a certain type of racing, bicycle racing, and now I want to start driving cars. I want to learn how to drive on the track. Specifically, I had a very clear goal, and it came down to almost buying a Lotus. I wanted something small and nimble like those cars that I saw growing up, something I was really in love with. And in 2015, Porsche came out with the GT4. And I knew actually that was actually the best car for me. Again, small, compact, much smaller and lighter than the 911, and it was just built for driving. I think even their ad campaign was Rebels Wanted. and they showed it just this sort of outlaw nature of this car, something that didn't really fit within the Porsche portfolio. And I mean, to be honest, I had a lot of other friends who had Porsches, and they were like, yeah, don't get the Lotus, get the Porsche. So, you know, I've always had a lot of respect for the brand, but I really fell in love with it once I actually bought one and started driving it. I mean, and again, I still love a lot of other brands. You know, I have a couple of other cars as well that, that I really love. But I mean, when it comes to, if you have a car, if you really want a car that you want to drive, something you can take to a track or take to the mountains, I mean, they're just built to drive. It's amazing, just the amount of durability and the amount of boost that they can take, and how powerful and agile they are. I'm sort of a converted Porsche lover, whereas I think probably most of the other guys are sort of born loving Porsches and aspiring to own one. I just kind of happened to get this tool. So yeah, maybe a little bit different story for most other people, but a lot of respect for the brand, but now I'm definitely a Porsche fan and a Porsche lover. So working at Puma Motorsport has given me a little bit more of an insight to see what the Porsche community is like, because it's not just one thing. It's multifaceted things, and those facets are very disconnected. At least that's been my point of view on it. You know, when I first got this car, I started going to some of the Porsche events held by the dealership, and I could say it was a very different crowd. You know, more about going golfing and collecting watches, not really driving the vehicles. And that was actually one of the things that put me off from the Porsche brand initially, you know, in the early 2000s, or as I was going to buy a Porsche, I was like, I don't think I want to be a part of that group. But then, as you get more deeper into it, I mean, you realize that there's this other outlaw, this other rebel community, people who are really caring about the brand and want to express themselves in the vehicles that they buy and curate and sort of custom tune that fits them and their personality. And I find this area much more interesting. It becomes a lot more closer to, you know, what I do for a profession as a designer, creating things and making things for people, like-minded people, and to see people doing that same thing with their vehicles. And in this case, something that used to be quite, you know, sacred as a Porsche, to not do it. I have to say this though, I had the chance, I think it was like in 2006, to meet Rod Emery and his dad when they were still in Oregon. I was working in Portland, Oregon at the time, and they were out by the coast, and we had a chance to go out there and meet them. And you know, at that time, they were really doing something that was outlaw. I think they were also the ones that really coined that term, outlaws, because they were doing the sacrilegious thing of turning 360s or 356s into race cars. So I think, you know, that part of the Porsche community, I think, is the one that's more alive, it's more creative, and it's more connected, and these people really find themselves. You know, it's interesting, I spend a lot of time at the Nordschleife, and when you go there for a Touristenfahrt, you'll find basically two groups in the parking lot. You'll find the Porsche group, 50%, and then you'll find the BMW, 50%. And they are very similar mentally, but they're just aligning themselves to different brands, but they both have that same passion of tuning their cars and expressing themselves through their cars and aligning with that brand. There's actually probably a lot more similarities than people would admit. I find that quite unique. Of the same mind, but say just as of different brands. I think what brings this Porsche outlaw community together is there is also a sense of heritage and prestige that's within, you know, the prestige and the heritage of you know, winning so many races and being so ultimately focused on performance, which very, very few brands do. And being able to take that sort of heritage and then bring it into some new or modern expression. And again, I think a lot of the cars that we see here on the tour, they're living that. I mean, they're part of a, you know, you see these great like G model to F model conversions, and every little piece has been painstakingly thought through, the suspension and the tires and the motor, and they're doing it in a way that they can build something for themselves, specifically for what they want to do and how it expresses themselves. So I think, you know, if I really had to sum it up, I know that's the long way to get there. I think it really is about this idea of looking backwards and looking forwards as a way of self-expression. So what brought me here to Sick Alps is really Mo. I've been working with him at Puma, and I've seen the work that he's been doing, like really, really great work. And I mean, he really also brought me into this community as well, meeting a lot of different people and making the connections. And I could see that he is really loving what he does, and he has a real passion for this. And you know, and I think coming here, I was a little bit intimidated because, you know, this car doesn't really fit the rest. I honestly, the first day I felt a little bit out of place, but that went away immediately, you know, and I think the other thing is just the people. I mean, this is, yeah, it's a tour, it's a drive, but it's, you know, I think Mo and Kirsten really selected the right personalities to have a great time, and I think that's more it than actually the cars and what we've done, and it's actually just meeting the people and seeing what they're creating. And I think that's what's great here, is that there's a lot of other creative designers, people here in this community and on this tour that made it, I think, for me, just really unique. And I'm looking forward now to the connections I've made here to see what's going to happen next, what we're going to do together. I mean, of course, the location, the driving, it was amazing. It was great to be in some of my favorite places, Großglockner. But to be honest, I think I'm really happy I decided to come. It was a very tight week with a lot of things to do, but if I would have missed out on this, I mean, I feel like I would have really missed something unique. Find the thing that you love to do and then share it with other people, you know. And the outlaw scene is a great way to express that. And I think what you're gonna find is really like-minded people who wanna come together and be in motion. I don't know how it is with a lot of, for me, you know, I always have this feeling that I get stir crazy in the winter months when I can't drive or do a road trip. And I think there is kind of this classic, sort of, I don't know if it's a cliche, but it's this idea of like the classic American road trip that you just go and spend a week driving with friends and doing something. And I think it's true to this day. And I think experiences like this are reasons why it should still live on and keep doing it. So get yourself a car, get out there and drive.
To understand what you're saying for a word is smoke. You gotta find your people and put the needle in the groove. When you're together, you got nothing to prove. When you're together, you got nothing to lose.
All right, guys, that's it for this episode. You can subscribe here or watch some other videos here. I do a lot of interviews with Porsche people. My goal is to interview as many people as possible in the Porsche community. I can't wait to hear all the stories that are out there and bring them to light for you guys. So please consider subscribing. We also have a couple builds going on. I've got my wife's Cayenne GTS we're building out to be an overland beast, as well as my Safari 911, which I'm almost ready to reveal. Hopefully will be done by the 25th. Hopefully, we'll see, but very excited for you guys to check that out.